So I'm miraloew, clearly, the girl in this particular team. I'm an artist mainly working with dance and performance through the mediums of video and photography. I work a lot collaboratively with this particular one over here, but also with a lot of other people. I've got some like very, very close collaborators. A couple of those collaborations I'll elaborate on later on. Yeah, I guess.
Hi, I'm David I'm also I'm a visual artist mostly. I also teach at Middlesex University digital media, and we're going to be talking about one particular piece that we did together. It's called Inner Bands and Honor Bands. We did that together with dance company Shavasi. But before we do that, we'd like to talk a little bit about where our art practice comes from and where we got the tools to navigate a project like that. So I would like to start with us. Oh, there's no picture. 1 second. This is weird.
Should I just continue?
Yeah.
Yeah?
1 second. I'm sending an output here.
So you're going to start talking about Salon Flux.
Yeah, let's just do it like this.
Is also, what do you mean?
Okay. Yeah, you continue.
No, do you want to wait for the
yes, please,
pictures to show up?
Fix this.
Let me fix this.
Because I'm sending a signal here. Okay. I'm putting it in and
just
out
emerge
again.
briefly? Is there a flash of something interesting?
There we go.
Oh,
okay. Right. So we moved to London in like 2006, and we both started studying there. And when we finished university, so we were living in this big warehouse, and we really missed university because we really missed having crits and like showing each other work and discussing it and stuff like that. So we started doing salons, which is basically just getting together, showing each other work, discussing it, and basically having a good time. This was the beginning of our collaborative practice. All of our friends were in that space, and it was like a hybrid event already because we used the space in a way where we were screening experimental film. We were like looking at kind of like stamp brackets and stuff like that, and then we would discuss it, and then there would be a performance, and then there would be DJs, and we'd just party. So that's where everything came from, and it was like a really, really good way of kind of forming relationships and also kind of getting an understanding what other people were about and how other people work, and giving each other space and making each other shine in a way.
It was also very much about creating a network, though. Like, all of us were immigrants. None of us really were from London, or just coming out of university. We sort of like missed that. Having the peers around and being able to exchange ideas with those peers. At that time, however, we were very much space-based. All of us were still based in London. We all just came out of university. We had this awesome warehouse where we were all at home. So we didn't really need a digital space to exchange ideas just yet. Yeah. That was sort of the early days of Salon Flux. 2011, we founded this collective.
And so we started putting on events like in different spaces after that, because everybody also like didn't stay in London. So we had like this huge group of collaborators that were then moving, in all different parts of the world, and we still wanted to keep in touch. And we all missed this place that Salon Flux was for us. So we started recreating that space. It became like something that is like dislocated in a way, that can happen everywhere. It always had like certain aspects to it that would remind everyone that this is still this space. So we'd have like still always these lines on the floor, and we'd have like plants in there, and it was like this like almost like a living room experience.
Exactly. Always Persian rugs to sort of remind us of Vienna, because like this is not a London thing. You don't tend to see Persian rugs in London, whereas you do see them a lot in Vienna. And it was always this idea to like drag these like living room objects into exhibition spaces, especially once we had to move out of the warehouse that we were initially in Unit 10. to make exhibition spaces a little bit more livable. So, you know, people often go in there and they're like, oh, I'm not entirely sure, am I allowed to touch anything? Am I even allowed to feel comfortable in here? And we were like, no, this is for you to be. Enjoy the art, chat about it. We usually also invite people into, even if we inhabit like a very sort of like neat white cube exhibition space, we'll always serve like tea and coffee and have like cake, and just make sure that people would actually like linger and really enjoy the spaces, and not to have that like separate, as like which so often happens in museum spaces. You have this museum and then you have the settle on cafe. This is where you consume the cafe, but this is not, you don't take the clothes to the artworks. Like, no, we want all of this together.
Yeah.
Was a lot of the Salon Flux idea.
A lot of big dinners with a lot of people. And yeah, eating, collective eating. So in a way, this kept evolving, and there was a certain ethos to it in the end, and I feel like almost like what really connected all of us was a sort of like radical generosity and a sense of play. And back in that moment, we really didn't know yet that this would be the basis of our future art practice, really. And there was an ethos involved that very much was based on friendships and
intimate exchanges. And one of the many collaborations that came out of Salon Flux was between myself and Jane Frances Dunlop, who's a Canadian performance artist who was based in London at the time. David introduced the two of us. The first time we collaborated actually was I commissioned her to create a performance for a particular event where I just really felt like I needed somebody working with language. I wanted something confrontational in there, but I really didn't perform at the time, and certainly not with words. Jane and I used to have our rule number one, and I think it might have been the only rule we had for years, was Mira doesn't have to talk. Jane has to talk, Mira doesn't have to, because words were not my friends at the time. So that's when I started collaborating with Jane, and pretty much straight away after we started collaborating, obviously I'm being from Austria, living in London, Jane being from Toronto, living in London at the time, being international artists, we constantly traveled. We were never really in one space for a long period of time. So we very, very quickly had to look at the internet as a place for us just to stay in touch. So in the beginning, we used email exchanges really just as a place to accumulate material. We would never exchange personal information in any of those emails, in the beginning at least. It was very much just like, this is the space where we create material, where our writing can live, and we've literally pulled whole performances just out of like little bits and bobs that we've done in emails. And then very quickly after that, we started actually exchanging images and words. So Jane would send me written instructions of how I should position my own body in the space. It was sort of like a very straightforward. Along the way there, we had a lot of like conversations. Well, does this now make me a writer if I collaborate with her? Does that make her a photographer if she collaborates with me? Also, how many words constitute one photographic image? How many photographs constitute an essay? What's a fair exchange in there? We started talking about emotional labors, generosity within collaboration, systems of care, particularly in that collaboration between Jane and myself. And there's one video that kind of like sums it all up in a way. I hope the sound works.
I've been thinking about the work we make each other. You and me specifically, but also generally. I saw David and he mentioned that the video was good, so that video works. But I think the more interesting thing is the giving of small partial ideas to each other, and the exchange being compulsively generous and forgiving and alive to the actual making and then goingness of working. I just talked to a poet about the charisma of spaces the other day. I also told him about our collaboration and about the video, David, that you shot, and about the session with Ali, and about the land on the floor. And I think he was trying to figure out what the piece we were working on was. And I told him there wasn't a piece we were just playing, which puzzled him, but not in a bad way. And led us to talk about this generosity. And in a way, this is the thing we have created. And trust in that is about agreeing and knowing the exchange as it occurs, in its moments, as opposed to thinking about the benefits of its results.
So, to me, this is almost like a manifesto how to do work together and how to approach making art. And in a way, this always like stuck with us. Mira continued working like intensely in that particular field, you know, doing collaborative work on the internet, through the internet, but also in physical spaces, obviously. But I'm gonna skip to a completely different moment in time, which was in 2000, 19 in South Italy, and I was shooting like a dance video with Elio Shavasi, who is a great choreographer. And it was a great experience, obviously, because south of Italy and just like being with dancers and shooting, and it was just great. It was kind of like this vibe. And this was like a series of workshops that would happen there, and lots of dancers would come there, and they would like develop a dance piece together with Elio. And I was really looking forward to doing this again the next year, but that didn't happen because the next year everything went sideways, and a global pandemic happened, and I was already getting ready, and then suddenly you couldn't travel anymore. And Elio got in touch with me and was like, okay, there's 80 dancers all over the world, and we can't do the workshop, so can we do a film with them? Can we do something with them? Can we reach out to them? And in the end, the weird thing about this moment was that I felt like everybody was kind of like struggling to find ways of doing work in this new situation, and we were like, yeah, we've been doing this for ages. So
It wasn't quite that deep.
obviously, there's lots of challenges to working with so many people on a collaborative filmmaking project, especially from a perspective of a filmmaker. It's like, how do we make this so it's coherent? How can this be one thing and not like lots of different bits and pieces? So obviously there were lots of challenges in terms of like filmmaking. So instructing people how to film themselves, how to composition, you know, all of these things. But what was also super clear in the very beginning is that the work that Mira has been doing with Jane and others and that ethos at the heart of it was really necessary to facilitate that moment.
You want to skip to the next slide with the instructions?
Sure. Oh,
yeah. So David got me on board on working on what was called in abeyance at the time to create these instructions to work with dancers. And like in the very beginning, I sort of I wrote a questionnaire because I was really interested. Obviously, this was like March 2020. We were all in places that we didn't know, and I was kind of in the beginning just very interested in. I understand what's my particular experience in this moment in time. I do not know what's the experience of a whole bunch of dancers. I don't even know where they are. They're all in their early 20s. They are supposed to have works, but I don't know what their longings are. I don't know how safe they are. So I sent these questionnaires asking them like all sorts of things, like where they're isolating, who they're isolating with, what are the things that they miss the most. And got like these like really extremely intimate responses, and then we kind of used that material as part of the instructions. And then so the instructions had two components to them. One was these written instructions that we wrote that on the one hand like really guided them to working with video. I think I was very aware that these are all, they're dancers, they're not video makers, they're not photographers, they're not meant to be. I'm guiding them, we are guiding them here to working with a media that they are not familiar with, and I want to make sure that they're comfortable doing so. So there was a lot of like technical support that we gave them, and like really trying to make them understand like, what's an image composition, how can we work with that? There's lines, there's light, how do you skew them? Are they straight? What's symmetry? How do we work with that? Do we not want to work with that? Can we disregard it? But also without making it too intimidating, making sure that there's still something playful within that. You know, this is not this rigid thing, and you need to create this thing. But I was like, there's a system here. There's thoughts. I share this with you, but then like by all means, do find your own way to position yourself within that. And then also being like just really playful, trying to instruct them to be creative, to be playful with the video material. And then the other part of the instructions were obviously one of the things that is absolutely brilliantly to connect with people and to reach out and to make sure that they're all in a similar kind of space is sound. So we created we had 3 sets of instructions, and each set had different kind of technical requirements. We also wanted to make sure that all of the videos look a little bit differently. You know, one's like focus on the windows, and then another one maybe we kind of explore shadows. We wanted them to stay indoors, partially also because there was just this era of like, there's just a lot of privilege with outdoor spaces as well. A lot of people didn't have them, so we kind of wanted to make sure that even in the most precarious situations, people would feel comfortable contributing something to this project. And then in the audio contemplations, it was kind of meditations.
You did introduce what they are, the audio contemplations.
I didn't introduce what they are.
No.
So these were the audio pieces that also came with the written instructions. They were all about, I think, 12, 15 minutes long. And the first part of them was very much like a meditation, where I kind of like actually did want to give those dancers a moment of peace and of reprieve. But also guide them to things that they had articulated in their questionnaires, what they were missing. The first one was focused on togetherness and solitude, where I kind of like guided them to memories of dancing with other people in a space, which was very clearly a thing all of us were missing, and them particularly so. The second one was on fastness and slowness. The very fast moving was a thing that a lot of dancers, and I guess like all of us, just being on a train, you know, just like that, seeing the world being really fast. And then the third one was it was called Cathedral.
It was about creating a shared common headspace, really, where we can all be apart, but also be together. And I feel like that audio gave us something really intimate here, because people had that on their headphones when they were moving to it. So they had like Mira's voice in it, guiding them to this place. And I made music to it and sound design. So it was really interesting to see how 80 people would have that in their heads and then move to it and then express themselves to it. Should I? Yeah. So I'm just going to show you some of the results so you can see how people interpret these things differently. Let's have a look at that one.
The world is suddenly finding ourselves in, where we are all at equal distance apart. And keeping physical distance has become a gesture of care, of protection for one another. Which makes me think of lucky charms that sometimes shatter. What happened to former points of contact, to proximities, to closenesses, to intimacies, when we detach them from the physical bodies we inhabit? In the absence of physical contact, of touch, how do we hold each other? Hold space for one another? Hold smiles in our hearts?
I love you.
After the work, I tried again, this time with the fragment of a poem by Michael Attaché. Kissing the stomach, kissing your skirt, he wrote. History is what you've traveled on and take with you. We each had our stomachs kissed by strangers to be unearthed. And as for me, I've lost everyone who kissed you here.
So we ended up with a huge archive, hundreds of videos, and people moving to these audio pieces. And to us, it was kind of like, it became this huge archive of a situation of many people experiencing a situation, which is very, very particular and very unique. And it was immediately clear, like, this can't be a movie. It's kind of like, it doesn't do it justice, really. So our initial response to this was like to create an immersive installation, multi-screen piece.
Maybe also just to say, lucky enough, it wasn't Elio Gervasi, the choreographer we worked with, also was on board. So I was like, okay, this is way too big. This can't just be a video.
We kept escalating it, really.
Yes.
And so it was like, and then But what became very clear throughout this process, because like it went from being basically like having been planned as a what is it? It was planned as this immersive installation, really, which was then picked up by Tanzquartier Vienna, who asked us to develop this into a dance piece or a stage piece, and the
But
whole
sadly, they were very clear from like we had like all of these ideas in our heads, and then by the time we actually had the first meeting with them, this was still 2020. The only thing that was certain was uncertainty, and the first thing they said was like, "Nah, it's definitely going to be a stage-on thing. There's no way people can interact with dancers or actually walk around something."
Yeah. So, in a way, like all of these restrictions, and they kept changing. So all of the whole premise kept changing. But that very much became part of the piece and the DNA of the whole thing. That it had to just evolve. Whatever new was thrown at us, we had to find a way of kind of like. But the piece itself was there because it was based on all of this material that those people created in this collaborative process, which in a way made it possible to kind of like reinvent this whole thing without actually touching the essence of it. What happened in the end was we developed it in a stage piece, really, and
For months.
for months,
Months and months.
of rehearsals.
Two musicians came over from London with 7 dancers from different countries in Europe. Crazy, absolutely crazy. Like stubbornly, like, yeah, this is going to be a stage piece in January 2021, sure.
And then 3 weeks before it happened, it was like, so there's not going to be an audience and it has to be on the internet. So we were like, okay. So, but in a way, like, we knew it can't be just a live stream. We knew we can't bring that piece, because like if you look at
Well, digitality had been such a big part of that piece, and working innovatively with it had been such a big part. We were like, there's no way this is just going to be a documentation of a stage piece.
Yeah.
We just can't.
So there were so many
Can't do
contributions, different positions, artists brought different materials and different pieces of expression, and it's like this can't be in a filmed stage. So we were looking to do something, interactive, but most interactive solutions are inherently really hard to get for most people, and it's the privilege of tech-savvy people to interact with them. So we developed a very, very simple concept, which was having a player, like a video player, that has 3 channels, which show different perspectives and different parts of the material, and not only what was filmed on the stage, but also what were original contributions from collaborators. So this enabled us to have like a film where the audience themselves had like, instead of watching it passively, they could like decide which perspective they want to take, which part of the archive they want to look at, or if they got bored, they could switch to a different channel. So it was like you would never see the same piece twice. And if you're curious how that feels and how that experience looks, you can actually see it on www.bayens.tv. It's still online. It's not a good thing to show here because it needs.
No,
to
it
be
needs
like
the experience to like actually press the button yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a way, again, I think all of this like interacting, having communities of practice, has prepared us for this really crazy situation and made it a really natural thing to actually navigate all of these obstacles. And
It was still really hard though. It wasn't just fun and games, but it also was fun and games.
yeah, and I'd like to say thank you to Elio Shavasi and also to the person who did the whole production, which is Franziska Selja-Schrammel. And I'd like to thank Thomas Walcher, who wrote the 3-channel player. And I'd like to thank all of the collaborators that helped us.
Yeah, Lottie and Graham for the music.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, we had obviously great musicians too. But yeah, we're out of time, so thank you.
So we still have got 2 minutes, so I would like to add something or ask about this process of producing the kind of perspectival installation.
how did you organize this process of creating this perspective?
You mean on abeyance?
Fear-based management. No, it's like it had to happen really quick.
It had to happen really quick because the thing was we were at Tanzquartier. We had that hall for the days that we were supposed to have the live performance in there, essentially. So it was like, I think, 5 days of actually being in the space. And then we had 48 hours
to edit everything.
To edit everything together and put it
but,
online.
Again, what really helped, all of the decisions we've been taking along the way. So all of the sound, even the contemplations, was at 120 beats per minute. All of the contributions had 3 perspectives. The stage itself had three screens to it. And when we then took the material and we put it together, it like everything just clicked magically together. So there was like these two sides to this whole process, which is one, the very, very particular like design decisions to like how can we do something with many, many ingredients, but it still fits together. And on the other hand, how the emotional and the collaborative process, like how do you develop strategies to create a narrative together and to have like a shared vision and like be at the same space, the headspace. And I think in the end, that process of developing that player and editing this and doing it, it felt sort of natural because the material was already built in a way that it's sort of modular.
Mm. And at least we did have a month from, I think it was about a month that that it was very clear that no live dance performances were going to happen. So it gave us some time to at least think about the player ahead, even if we didn't have the material and couldn't start editing the thing, but at least like nail the concept.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a really, really, like, Mira is really good at directing video, and we had like a really great team of people just jumping in, helping us out, doing great camera work, Flo Hanacek. And yeah, in the end, it was just like, it had to have, the biggest downside was like having the Tanzquartier without an audience, doing the performance, and then it's over, and then you go home, then it's on the internet, and yeah.
That was so frustrating. No applause. It was like, did this happen? Is anybody out there actually watching it? Where's our champagne?
It was a bit anticlimactic, but then I really like coming back to the piece and looking at it from time to time and like looking at it in different ways, because it's such a particular crazy moment, but also like a weird sort of accomplishment to see how all of these, how that ethos of collaboration and how those processes of like working together, like on the internet and in different places, but also in the same places, yeah, it prepared us.
Thank you.